Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. During the afternoon of the second day's fight at Gettysburg, the 403 strong 4th Michigan Infantry battled for its very life in the Wheatfield. Their number included the soldier pictured here, David T. Dudley of Company C, an Ohio born peacetime farmer who traded his pitchfork for a musket when he joined the Army at Adrian, Michigan, soon after the war began. The badge on his coat indicates he served in the Army of the Potomac's 5th Corps, commanded at Gettysburg by Major General George Sykes. Back in 1861, the 4th numbered among the earliest regiments to arrive in Washington, D.C. The regiment went on to prove its mettle in heavy fighting at the first and second battles of Bull Run, Antietam, and Fredericksburg, where Dudley suffered an undisclosed wound, likely minor, and Chancellorsville. At Gettysburg, Dudley and his fellow Michiganders were surrounded and hit hard by a fierce Confederate charge on its right flank. The suddenness and shock of the attack broke their line. The color sergeant dropped the regiment's flag, and the men rallied to retrieve it. A brutal scrum followed, and in the melee, the colonel of the 4th, Harrison H. Jeffords, suffered mortal wounds and died. An account of the desperate fight appears in the regimental history titled Reminiscences, Incidents, Battles, Marches, and Camp Life of the Old 4th Michigan Infantry. I want to share the narrative, which begins with the approach to Gettysburg. The regimental history states, we passed on and across the Potomac Ferry at Edwards. On the way, we saw plenty of evidence of the cavalry advance, dead horses, accoutrements belonging to cavalry outfits. We arrived at Hanover, Pennsylvania on the afternoon of July 1st, rested and fed, then on to Gettysburg, marched all night, a beautiful moonlit night. As we passed farmhouses, the people came out with water and refreshments handed to us as we passed along, footsore and tired. An aide de camp came riding along saying, boys, keep good courage. McClellan is in command of the army again. Instantly, the space above was filled with the hats and caps of the gratified soldiers. They shouted and hollered and kicked up their heels and were frisky with the supposed good news. I mention this to show with what veneration Little Mac was held by the Army of the Potomac. I knew this was untrue myself, but it served its purpose as intended. Many a brave heart went down the next day with the belief in his heart that McClellan was in command. On to Gettysburg. We arrived in sight of the line of battle being formed at 9 a.m. on July 2nd, lunched and was then moved up near Round Top, was halted again and waited the coming struggle. It came. The regiment was formed in line of battle with the brigade and was moved near the battle going on in front of us with other troops engaged. The regiment stood under fire for at least a half hour before it became engaged, getting a large share of spent balls from the front. Soon the general commanding the division, Brown, said, boys, I want you to put in a few licks for Pennsylvania. The bucktails will go in on your left. Forward. It was a relief to hear the order march. We advanced into the maelstrom of rebel bullets. By some oversight, our right was exposed, and we had to contend with 3-1. We held them until they made a fierce charge, charging our right and doubling it to the rear of our left. We were taken at a great disadvantage. I looked to our rear. Our colors were there, and men rallying around them. Our colonel, H. Jeffords, was there in the thickest of the struggle, calling on the boys to save the flag. They needed no urging. They fought like demons. Our colonel was killed, shot, and then bayoneted. A brave man was killed by the hand of a traitor, and many others too, who were simple privates, but heroes for all that. Every one of them who fell doing his duty or imposed duty. We had to fall back. So this ends the account in the regimental history. Now, you may be wondering what happened to Private Dudley. At some point during the chaos and confusion, and amidst the drifts of battle smoke, he became caught up amongst the Confederates who captured him, hauled off to Richmond, and confinement at Belle Isle, a prison for Union non commissioned officers and enlisted men located on an island in the middle of the James River. Dudley was attacked by rheumatism on the march out of Gettysburg. His condition rapidly worsened during his time in prison. By late August of 1863, less than 2 months after his capture, he could no longer care for himself. His captors paroled and exchanged him, and he returned to the North. Of course, the thinking was that the Confederates would get one of their men back, send Dudley home, and Dudley would die of whatever ailments he had. However, Dudley eventually regained his strength and he returned to the Fourth before the end of 1863, mustering out at the expiration of his term of enlistment in June of 1864. Dudley returned to the farm in Michigan, married, and started a family. In 1869, they relocated to Nebraska to the community of Weeping Water. Dudley lived there until 1912, dying at age 74. He outlived his first wife, Melinda, who had passed in 1874. His second wife, Atelia, and 4 children survived. Now, Dudley's story is similar to many of the rank and file who served. They left behind little or no official paper trails other than military service records, pension files, and census records. No letters, journals, or other personal papers of Dudley's have yet surfaced. Details of his life and others like him are sketchy at best compared to officers who are generally educated men, well known in business and civic circles in their hometowns. However, in Private Dudley's case, we do have a sense of his character thanks to one of his wartime comrades, Albert V. Cole, who served in Dudley's Company C. Cole had avoided landing on the casualty list at Gettysburg, but a year later, at the Battle of Hawes Shop in Virginia, he suffered a severe wound in his left arm that required an amputation. Here's how Cole remembered Dudley, which was published in a local newspaper soon after Dudley's passing. Cole wrote, "We touched elbows from Bull Run to Malvern Hill and back to Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, etc. David T. Dudley was a good soldier. He served his country well. There are more of his comrades on the other side of the river than there are on this side. He has gone to join them in an everlasting reunion. The widow mourns the death of a true soldier. I mourn the loss of a noble comrade. Rest in peace, Private Dudley." Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.